I still remember the moment she stepped into my apartment, heels clacking on the hardwood, eyes scanning like she was assessing damage. "It's cozy," she smirked, her tone soaked in condescension. My sister-in-law had 2.5 million followers and zero respect for me. I smiled, offered tea, and mentally took notes. That was the day I decided I wouldn't just prove her wrong, I'd dismantle her reality. She thought she was stepping into a minimalist shoebox. What she didn't know was, she just walked into a game she wasn't ready to play, and I never play fair when I'm underestimated. They came exactly at 2 p.m., just as she said they would. Brooke was first through the door. Of course she was, with her designer tote, oversized sunglasses, and that curated smile she wore like armor. Behind her, my in-laws followed like a royal procession, carefully stepping onto the tatami mats I had hand-laid the year before. My husband smiled sheepishly, trying to bridge the two worlds, his family's loud opulence and my quiet curation of space and silence. "Wow, very zen," Brooke said, eyes already darting around the room. She pulled out her phone before even removing her shoes. "Guys, you have to see this," she spoke into her camera, panning slowly across the open floor plan. My sister-in-law lives in what I'd call a minimalist experiment. Think, 1 cup, 1 spoon, 1 window. I watched the chat bubble up on her live stream, laughing emojis. "She's brave," one follower typed. Another said, "Looks like a waiting room." Brooke laughed. "Exactly," she chimed, like they were reading her mind. I offered matcha. She declined. Her mother took it, sipped politely, then whispered something behind her hand to her husband. He nodded. They stayed 15 minutes, just long enough to critique the lack of a television, ask twice if we could really live without a couch, and post 3 separate Instagram stories, each one a different angle of my bonsai tree, captured as though it were ironic decor in a lifestyle parody. "This little guy's cute," Brooke said, touching one of its tiny leaves with a manicured nail. "You know it takes, decades to make it look like this?" "Yes," I smiled. "That's the point." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't respond. When they left, she leaned in for a faux hug and whispered, "We'll have to work on your aesthetic. Can't have you representing the family brand looking like a monk." As the door closed, the silence felt louder. My bonsai sat in the corner, untouched again, still perfect. That night, I watched the stream. The comments were still rolling in. "She needs a makeover. Is this a hostage situation?" "Why marry down?" I didn't reply. I didn't even log in. But I watched. I took notes. 3 days later, I received an email. It was from Brand House Collective, Brooke's PR and branding firm. Subject line, "Opportunity for collaboration." I clicked. They wanted to bring me on board as a lifestyle consultant to help expand Brooke's content into more authentic domestic spaces. I almost laughed. They framed it as a compliment, how I radiated simplicity, how my aesthetic was trending, how the public respected authenticity more than ever. Translation: her viewers were tired of the same high-rise walk-in closet shots. They wanted something real, and I, apparently, was now real. I said yes, but not for the reason they hoped. Within a week, I was invited to their downtown office. Brooke pretended to be surprised. "You actually came," she said, offering an air kiss. "Let's build something beautiful, shall we?" The agency walked me through the pitch. "We'd love for you to do a home tour, maybe a day-in-the-life vlog. Show your space, your process, your habits. We think it would bring balance to Brooke's channel, something softer, grounded, more you." I asked questions about data, analytics, sponsorship terms. Brooke blinked when I brought up engagement to conversion ratios. "Oh," she said, "I didn't realize you were into that sort of thing." I smiled. Designing spaces is all about systems, attention flow, friction points. Same logic applies to digital ecosystems. Her team nodded, impressed. I pretended not to notice Brooke's discomfort. That weekend, I reviewed their back-end analytics. Spikes in engagement. Every time Brooke posted something chaotic, her viewership dropped in retention. Her luxury partnerships were holding on by threads. Worse, they were inflating their audience using microbots to simulate comment traffic, a direct violation of their most recent contract with a European skincare brand. I saved the data. Quietly. The following Monday, I signed the consulting contract. Brooke stood beside me, clinking a glass of kombucha. "Cheers to merging worlds," she said. "You can help me simplify, and I can help you scale." What she didn't know was I'd already started designing her collapse. The office was all glass and polish. Every surface reflected ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a curated flex, and the open concept layout buzzed with curated chaos. Ring lights, content boards, white noise. I walked in like I didn't belong. Ava Morgan, minimalist, designer of nothing flashy. I was the calmest thing in that room. "Hey," a junior assistant greeted me like she'd been instructed to make me feel empowered. She led me past Brooke's corner glass suite and into the main conference room, where 5 of her team were already waiting, laptops open, coffee in hand, prepped for yet another brand strategy meeting. "Let's get you up to speed," the content manager said, tapping on her screen. "We pulled analytics from your IG and Brooke's crossover posts. Engagement's up 14%. The Zen Core angle is resonating." I nodded politely, then opened my folder. "I took the liberty of running a deeper report," I said, sliding printed sheets across the table. "Not just likes, retention curves, view-through rates, demographic heat maps. You're losing traction with 3 of your top-tier sponsors. Their consumer base isn't aligned with artificially inflated metrics." Silence. I could hear someone shift in their chair. Another cleared their throat. Brooke hadn't arrived yet. The PR head blinked. "These charts? This isn't from our dashboard." "No," I replied. "I pulled API-level data from your public-facing engagement patterns and compared it to the back-end pixel feedback from your link trees and swipe-ups. It's clean, just brutally honest." Someone mumbled, "Jesus," under their breath. I didn't flinch. I wanted them to feel the shift. "I also did a breakdown of potential investors based on your upcoming pivot into branded wellness. 2 are silently evaluating new partnerships. Neither believes the engagement data is authentic. And they're right." Just then, Brooke entered. She was radiant, post-reformer Pilates, coffee in hand. "Did I miss anything?" The team froze. No one wanted to be the one to summarize. I stood. "Nothing major, just showing everyone what's really happening beneath the surface." She gave me that tight-lipped smile. "You always were good at peeling layers." Later that day, I received a text from her. "I never realized you had this kind of eye. Kind of scary, in a good way." I didn't reply. They asked me to redesign her filming studio, a chance to align the brand visually with the new emotional tone. I accepted. What they didn't know was every object I brought in was dual purpose. Plants that doubled as sound traps, lighting fixtures embedded with hidden microphones. I restructured her entire set into a soundstage for truth. The first thing I captured, her shouting at her assistant over a minor typo in a brand script. The second, a call with her finance manager, tense, clipped. She was in debt, deep. She'd borrowed heavily against her personal brand, taken advances on sponsorships that weren't guaranteed. I filed every file, cataloged every word. Meanwhile, I played the part. The humble little sister-in-law with sharp eyes for lighting and the soul of a monk. She let her guard down because she believed I wasn't competition. At her next launch party, she invited me personally. "You should come. Might even do a joint live stream. The people love contrast." It was held in a rooftop gallery, glass walls, soft jazz, trays of rosé and beetroot canapes. Influencers posed in mirror halls. Photographers hovered. Everyone was wired into someone else's performance. Brooke was radiant again. She wore gold, always gold. "I want to toast the power of reinvention," she said into the camera. of embracing contrast, of finding clarity, and I owe a lot of that clarity to this woman right here. She turned to me, pulled me into frame. I smiled, bowed slightly, then tilted my glass and said, "To transparency." That night, after the live stream ended and the party dimmed, I walked into her studio, now subtly mine. I switched on the master console. Playback. Her voice, sharp, frantic, talking about shifting funds between shell companies, about a client lawsuit she'd settled quietly. Names, figures, leverage. I compressed the audio, cleaned it, sent it to someone who had once trusted Brooke, someone she had crushed for stealing her brand style 5 years ago. Subject line, foreclosure. Attachment to MP3 message. Sometimes people like us need receipts to heal. You deserve that. I didn't wait for a reply. As I stepped out into the hallway, Brooke's laughter echoed from the guest lounge. She was still basking, still blind. I paused to water the bonsai I'd brought into her office as a branding element. It had grown just a little, curved deeper, more elegant, just like everything else I was shaping. The invitation was elegant, minimalist, printed on recycled cotton paper with soft gray ink and a single line of embossed text, "Reclaim your space." The subtext was intentional. This wasn't just another influencer retreat. It was a shift, a reclamation. I hosted it in an old industrial loft turned creative sanctuary. No neon signage, no ring lights, just natural light, warm wood, and stillness. 40 guests, all micro and macro influencers, some rising, some fading, all of them seeking authenticity, or at least what passed for it now. Brooke arrived late, flanked by 2 assistants and a content manager who looked vaguely overwhelmed. She was dressed in soft neutrals, silk blend trousers, and a draped blouse she'd tagged as conscious fashion. Her presence was magnetic, even if her aura was starting to crack. "You want me to speak?" she asked, voice rising slightly. "I thought I was just attending." I smiled, feigned surprise. "I thought you'd be perfect for it. Who better to talk about staying real in a curated world?" She paused, then nodded. "Of course, that's flattering." We began with grounding exercises, breathing, silence. I watched her shift, uncomfortable in the absence of performance cues. The cameras weren't rolling yet. When her time came, she took the mic like a veteran. She smiled into the crowd. "Authenticity," she began, "isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen, unfiltered, uncut, unafraid." The crowd nodded, swayed. Someone filmed. Someone else whispered, "She's good." I sat at the back, just listening. Behind her, the projector screen shifted. It was a visual tribute to creative spaces, a slideshow I'd curated to play silently during her speech. Quiet, ambient shots of workspaces, sketches, ideation boards. Most wouldn't notice the details, but one frame caught attention. A design sketch. Then another. Mood boards, color swatches, watermarked with my old initials, subtle, embossed, barely visible, but still there. The third image showed my original concept for a modular shelving system Brooke had once claimed as hers. The watermark had been clumsily cropped out, but a shadow of it remained. Someone murmured. The air changed. Brooke faltered for a beat, eyes flicking to the screen, her smile strained. I stood. "Some of these designs," I said softly, "were part of my early work, before I went into interiors full-time. Some were shared in trust." Gasps. Silence. The kind of hush that only happens when performance collapses into exposure. Brooke cleared her throat. "Creative ideas circulate. Inspiration overlaps." I shook my head gently. "There's overlap. And then there's deletion." The Q&A ended early. The footage hit Twitter before we finished cleanup. That night I posted nothing, said nothing, but I watched. Comment sections swelled with side-by-side comparisons, old archives, blog screenshots, dates, credits, my initials. Brooke went silent. Her team, less so. One tried to frame it as an unfortunate creative convergence. Another claimed no intent to mislead. I waited, then posted a story, a quote in white text on black background. Credit isn't about ego, it's about truth. And then, a quiet cascade. Former interns, junior designers, 2 ex-collaborators, each with their own stories, screenshots, emails, DMs. Her empire didn't fall overnight, but it tilted. I began posting again. Soft content, slow spaces, daily rituals, behind the scenes of my new studio. No drama, just presence. And then I revealed the space, not in a dramatic walkthrough, just a quiet photo. A cup of tea on a windowsill, cityscape in the background. The caption read, "New energy, old lessons." Someone asked, "Where is this?" Another guessed. Then someone recognized the tiling. It was Brooke's penthouse. Or rather, it had been. She'd listed it in secret months before, pressured by debts, late payments. I'd bought it through a shell firm. Quietly, cleanly, no emotion. Now it was mine, and completely restructured. In my next post, I filmed a short reel, a time-lapse of me rearranging furniture, placing plants, painting over a gold-accented wall. No narration. Caption, just fixing a few corners. The internet ignited. Comments flooded in. Wait, is this? No way she's living in Brooke's place. This is the ultimate plot twist. Brooke went live 2 days later, puffy-eyed. "There's a lot of noise right now," she said. "I've made mistakes, like everyone, but I refuse to be vilified for being successful." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Control wasn't about being loud. It was about deciding when the silence speaks for you. I never posted the receipts, not the emails, not the recordings, not the payment logs tucked behind Brooke's brand deals. I didn't need to. Truth, when seeded carefully, grows all on its own. People started noticing patterns, the phrasing of her captions, the recycled backdrops, the timestamps that didn't match. My story became theirs to unravel, piece by piece, comment by comment, reaction by reaction, and the more I stayed silent, the louder it all became. By the end of the week, 3 sponsors had pulled out. One issued a public statement. "We expect transparency and creative integrity from our partners. We will not tolerate manipulation of identity, origin, or authorship." Brooke disappeared from socials for 2 days. When she returned, it wasn't with a carefully crafted comeback, but a vague announcement about taking space to reflect. Her following dropped by almost 20% overnight. But worse, her engagement plummeted. The people weren't angry anymore, they were bored. The magic had evaporated. I watched quietly from the penthouse she once ruled. I'd rearranged every room, softened its edges, stripped away the gloss until only function and breath remained. The gold-trimmed vanity was gone. The built-in content wall dismantled. It wasn't her space anymore. It was mine. The launch for my app came next, not a viral moment, a soft ripple. I chose a simple gallery downtown, warm wood floors, no flash. The app, less but true, wasn't just about design, it was about philosophy, about learning how to curate your space based on your values, not trends, about recognizing manipulation in marketing and finding the courage to choose quiet over noise. The tagline was simple: what fills your space fills your mind. The crowd was intimate. Bloggers, thinkers, 2 editors from mid-tier lifestyle publications, real people, not avatars. There was no champagne, only tea. No gift bags, just small pouches of incense and handwritten notes. Then came the final moment. I stepped onto the small stage, barefoot, as always, under warm lights. No one clapped. They just waited. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about truth," I began. "Not the kind that shouts over others, the kind that settles into your bones quietly, changes how you look at your walls, your days, your decisions." I could feel them leaning in. I've lived in large spaces that felt hollow and tiny ones that felt sacred. Truth isn't a square footage, it's a standard. There was stillness, then soft nods, and then the final reveal, a walkthrough of my current studio space, filmed in natural light, silent, gentle transitions. A few recognized it, the windows, the view. There was a gasp. One voice whispered, "Is that—" I smiled, but said nothing. That clip reached more people than any call-out post ever could. Meanwhile, Brooke's empire continued to wither. One of her ex-assistants published a piece titled, "Behind the Curtain, When Influence is Inherited, Not Earned." It was damning, but not cruel, just honest. The kind of honesty that stings because it's not exaggerated. I didn't touch it. Instead, I started rebuilding. Not my brand, but a team. I reached out to people I knew had been burned before. Former interns. A freelance editor Brooke never paid. A social media analyst she blamed publicly during a failed launch. They all said yes. Together, we created something lean, ethical, and real. We didn't sell the illusion of transformation. We taught people how to create their own. My favorite part? We didn't name Brooke once, but our slogan traveled. True space. True you. It wasn't plastered on billboards. It was whispered in DM groups, shared between friends. It stuck because it didn't scream. One night, someone sent me a screenshot. Brooke outside a closed event space, crying, alone. Rumors said she lost a 7-figure partnership that week. Her agency had quietly dissolved. She still had followers, but no direction. I didn't feel triumphant, just resolved. The final gesture wasn't for the internet. I had found one of my original sketchbooks in a storage unit, a rough concept from 3 years ago. The design Brooke had stolen and monetized. I'd redrawn it, evolved it, made it better. But the original, that still had value, as a reminder. I wrapped it in linen, slipped it into an envelope, wrote one line, "Keep it, for memory, not for use." No signature. I left it at the front desk of her apartment building. I wasn't sure she still lived there. Maybe someone else would find it, maybe it would get tossed, but maybe, just maybe, she'd open it and see who I had always been, not a rival, not a victim, just the quiet truth that outlasts the noise. Success has a scent. It's subtle but distinct. Paper fresh from contracts, the low buzz of recognition when you enter a room, the silence people give you when they're calculating how much power you hold. I knew that scent now. I wore it everywhere. But something else followed close behind. A wait. It started when I caught myself refreshing analytics more than usual, checking who had reposted my app, reading comment sections under my interviews, not for criticism, but for control, measuring how much they still needed me to speak before they'd consider me real. One night, I watched a clip from a talk I'd given a month earlier. I didn't recognize myself. The tone, the pacing, even the smile, it was polished, curated. I had become a brand whispering the same kinds of truths I once demanded from others. That terrified me. So I called the only person I knew wouldn't care how far I'd come. Her name was Elise. Once my professor, then my boss, now something between a mentor and mirror. She had seen me at my lowest, post-bankruptcy, post-breakup, pre-reinvention. Back then I cried on her floor surrounded by receipts and dreams. She invited me over with no questions. Her apartment hadn't changed, still full of books stacked in asymmetrical towers, incense always burning, and an old armchair with the same tear in the side. I sat. She poured tea. "You built an empire without noise," she said after listening to everything. "But tell me, are you living inside it or defending its walls?" I didn't answer right away. She watched me with the kind of patience only survivors have. "I didn't mean to become her," I whispered. "I just didn't know where to stop." "That's the difference," she said gently. Brooke never stopped because she couldn't see beyond her own image. You stopped here. You came back. I looked down at the cup in my hand. Its glaze had chipped. She leaned in, voice lower. "Let me ask you something." I nodded. "You got your revenge. You outmaneuvered her, reclaimed your work, bought her space, but Ava, are you happy? The question felt like a punch wrapped in silk. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I opened my inbox to find a proposal marked urgent. It was from a high-level executive at a rebranded media group, formerly the same PR agency that had once shielded Brooke. They wanted me, the new face of their Authenticity Reimagined initiative, a partnership across podcasting, lifestyle products, sponsored content, millions on the table, unlimited reach. The irony was suffocating. They had watched Brooke burn and now came crawling to her antithesis, ready to bottle and sell what they had once helped bury. The pitch was clear. You already have the narrative. Let us scale it. I scrolled through the deck, slide after slide of carefully packaged values. My values, now itemized and monetized. The same firm that spun Brooke's excess into aspiration now wanted to do the same with my restraint. I felt my stomach turn. I walked away from my desk, poured water, let silence fill the room. They didn't want me. They wanted a cleaner version of her. The machine doesn't care who it crowns, only that someone wears the crown. I took 3 days to respond. On the 4th, I posted one final video. It wasn't scripted. No lights, no editing, just me, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the penthouse with sunlight coming through half-closed curtains. My voice was quiet. I've been asked to scale, to franchise, to be the next evolution of something that already failed. Pause. But I didn't start this to win. I started it because I couldn't stay silent anymore. And now that things are quiet again, I realize I don't want to keep climbing. I don't want to become another product. I just want to be true. The screen faded to black, and then the words, I don't want to win. I want to be real. That post had no hashtags, no follow-ups, and I didn't check the numbers. The ocean was never part of the plan, not consciously, but somehow every time I closed my eyes during those final weeks in the city, I heard waves, not traffic, not keyboard clicks, just water meeting sand and pulling back again, like a long breath in a world that forgot how to exhale. So I left. No announcement, no farewell post. I handed off my projects, let the app run itself, and moved into a small cottage 2 blocks from a rocky coastline in Northern California. The house smelled of cedar and salt. The walls weren't perfectly painted. The windows rattled in the wind. It felt like breathing for the first time. I spent the first month doing nothing that looked productive. I walked barefoot. I ate when I was hungry and stopped when I was full. I read fiction again. I let the silence be more than a pause. It became its own answer. Word got out, as it always does. The first letter came from a young woman who had once interned for a high-profile influencer, only to burn out at 23. Then a second, from a designer who'd lost her studio after her work was repurposed by someone with a bigger platform. They didn't want me to fix things. They wanted space. So I built one. I called it the workshop, though we never made anything physical there. It was a long room behind the cottage, windows all around, floor cushions and warm tea. People came to sit, to talk, to cry, to ask how to rebuild without selling their soul in the process. There were no sign-ups, no press releases, just a single line on a quietly posted site. We start where it broke, then we make something real. One day, someone brought a camera. I didn't want to film, but they insisted. It wasn't for content, just documentation. They asked if I'd speak about healing, so I did. No makeup, no prep, just me in that room saying what I knew in my bones. Healing isn't aesthetic, I said, looking directly at the lens. It's not linen and candles and green juice. It's raw, messy. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like leaving. Sometimes it looks like finally saying, I don't care if they believe me, I believe me. It was only 90 seconds long, but it spread like fire. It wasn't viral in the old way. No hashtags, no trending tags. But it moved through people, DM to DM, text to text. It showed up in group chats, played silently in therapy lobbies, quoted in captions by people I'd never met. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from TED's international curation team. Subject line: "We saw what you said. They invited me to speak, not on design, not on branding, but on rebuilding identity in a post-curation world." I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied simply, "Yes." That fall, I walked on stage in a soft black tunic, barefoot as always, and told a story not about Brooke or revenge or brand empires, but about silence, about what happens when we stop trying to win a game we didn't ask to play. I didn't mention names. I didn't reference platforms. But when I stepped off stage, a dozen people hugged me without words. One cried. After that, I returned to the coast, and something shifted. People didn't see me as the woman who exposed Brooke anymore. They saw me as something quieter, truer. The messages changed. Fewer interviews, more letters. Real letters. Handwritten in slanted script, telling me about mothers who finally left toxic jobs, about sons who stopped performing masculinity to survive their schools, about artists who started again. One evening, I stood in the doorway of the Penthouse. Yes, it was still mine. I never sold it. No one lived there. I paid the building fees and let it sit, undecorated, untouched. It had become something else, a relic, not of Brooke, not even of influence, but of me. The me who once believed success meant control. That being heard meant being loud. That power came from being above someone else. Now I saw it differently. Sometimes we keep old spaces not to live in, but to remember who we've outgrown. I didn't enter, just stood there, keys in hand, watching the sunset bounce off the glass. Back at the coast, I kept living. I hosted fewer workshops, not because demand dropped, but because I didn't want to become another dependency. Healing has to walk on its own. The final scene is not a stage or a screen or a post with perfect lighting. It's me one morning brushing my teeth, looking up. And for the first time in years, the woman in the mirror didn't need to prove anything. She just existed. Whole, true,